Yay! You made it to another episode of the We Can Hustle podcast. My name is Shelby Olyschlager, and the question is, how do you create the best experiences for ourselves? Well, for me, I did the work, and I know that it looks completely different for everybody, but the universal rules apply to us all. In this podcast, I share the lessons I have learned from riding, training, and competing with horses, as well as guest stories to share, motivate, and inspire us all to be the best that we can be. Together, we can hustle. Welcome, everybody, to the We Can Hustle podcast. Today, we have a legend in the house that I'm so excited to chat with. Connie Combs is here today to discuss all the stories that she has in her years of barrel racing. So to get started, Connie, I always love to hear the background, like what led you here. So it's true that you won an NFR at 18 years old. So can you tell us just a backstory of really what led you down the path to barrel racing and to the NFR at that age?
How I got started was my dad. When I was little, I just liked horses from the time I was, I think, born. And so I got my first horse when I was 8, and it was a young horse, so he didn't know anything. He was bad. He was a paint horse named King. So I rode him till I was 12, and then my dad got me another horse. And he said, this will be a step-up horse. It's a runaway racehorse, okay? So I'm like, what is a runaway racehorse? He said, well, when he doesn't win the race, he goes through the center of the track. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to get him stopped and turned? He goes, well, you have to figure that out. So I did, and then I got my next horse. His name was Maudie's Joak, and he's the one that took me to the next level. And I was only 16 when I got him. And was I ready for him? Apparently so. I think this was all a God thing, is what I say, because I'm like, he was only 3 when I started him, and I was only 16. So we were both pretty young, even though I'd rode the other 2 bad horses before. And I kind of knew how to deal with problems. When I got him, he knew how to run. My dad goes, my dad always said they know how to run, put the turn in them. So always had me good horses that knew how to run other than my first one. And I had to teach him everything. But and then I started him on the barrels, and then in 90 days, he started winning at 3. And I'm like, okay, I knew right then he wasn't a regular horse, even though I was young. And my dad told me, he goes, this horse is going to take you where you want to go. He goes, so we're going to just start out easy with him. He's only 3. We'll just start out easy. Of course, futurities, they didn't have that going on then. They were just starting. But I was more interested. I was in high school rodeo. I started out in 4-H, but at the time I was in high school rodeo. But I did get my permit for my pro card, and I filled it pretty quick.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So
yeah.
All horse training aside, which we'll get into, and I'm excited to hear that story. What was it like when you got that horse, or just knowing that, hey, this horse can take me somewhere? And I guess even stepping up into that position of hey, I'm going to get my pro card, and finding kind of that alignment to do something like that. Was it just something that you felt yep, this is my next step, and you just went for it? Or what was that like?
It was actually my dad. He said, we're going to get your permit and take this horse and see how good he does. Yeah. And I'm like, you mean I got to go run with the pros? I'm like, only 16 years old. I've only ran in high school rodeos and 4-H and local play days, gymkhanas and stuff like that, some for the fun of it. But I was always competitive. I never liked to lose. So I did have the competitive side there. And then my dad, he just more or less said, we're just going to enter a few rodeos close. We're not going to go too far, kind of see how this horse clocks. And he started clocking, and he kept clocking. And then I was living in Louisiana at the time. So we moved back to Oklahoma in the summer. And in the spring, I was running him and down in Louisiana. So he knew what mud was. I had to train him in a lot of adverse conditions. He didn't have the perfect. Everybody wants the perfect ground these days to train in. Well, there was no perfect ground down there. There was grass, water, mud, whatever you could find to ride in. So then we moved up here, and then we started going to some pro rodeos in Oklahoma, North Texas, kind of in that area. And I knew that was going to step it up a notch, because I'm like, okay, there's tougher runners in this area. It's always kind of been known for barrel racing. And so that's what I did. I started entering a few pro rodeos around here. And then my mom came up late summer, and then we ended up going to one in Coffeyville, Kansas, Veneta, Oklahoma. And I won Coffeyville, placed at Veneta, but again, it was nothing but mud. It rained the whole time. And I think that's why he did good and I did good, because I trained him in the mud. So it helped to have, again, the adverse conditions I trained in helped me win when I had to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple
Yeah.
things like I did see one of your posts just talking about having a horse in adverse conditions. So what do you really think the
Uh-huh.
benefit is, and how could someone, if they do, like if they have a nice arena, like what could be an example of getting them more exposed to these adverse conditions that you're talking about?
Well, like if you have an outdoor arena, everybody wants to ride in covered indoor arenas with the perfect conditions, right? You need to go get an outdoor arena and sometimes not work your ground so much. Everybody thinks, oh, it's got to be worked constantly and smooth. And years ago, the Uries don't live too far from me, and I would go down there and ride with them. Some I went to a couple of their summer camps with Florence, and they would have ruts around the barrels, and they were like, these horses have to learn how to handle that. Don't
Mhm.
go out there every time there's a rut and smooth it out. Make them learn how to stay in the ruts. And that's kind of an old rodeo saying. I heard John Ferris say years ago, stay in the ruts and you won't have a ground problem. If you get on the outside of them, you're going to have trouble. So I would just listen to little things like that from different people and go, that's interesting. Stay in the ruts, don't get on the outside of them. When it rained, I didn't look for a reason not to ride. I go, okay, I'm going to go get in the mud today, you know. Or sometimes you leave the water sprinkler on and you make a big mud hole, because sometimes when you run at a rodeo, it's pretty dry, but sometimes between the barrels, it's not. So
Mm.
you have to teach your horse how to go through all that. So I just say go out and ride when the weather's not so good, when it's a little wet and muddy, a little windy, not when it's dangerous, but just don't make life like I heard this doctor say not long ago on the radio. He goes, don't make life so easy. Park as far as you can out in the Walmart parking lot and make yourself walk. Don't look for the closest spot. And that's
It's
true in horse. Uh-huh. Yeah, and that's true in horse training. Don't look for the easy way out. Go look for the toughest things you can ride in, and
Mhm.
and go ride in those things. Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Hmm.
we're calling out all the fair weather riders who are like, which I honestly am kind of guilty of too sometimes, where it's like, oh, it's a little like, because I'm in Canada, so it might be cold and raining and like just windy, and it's like, ugh. But it's true if you really want to get that competitive advantage, and I guess that is also partially what determines the winner versus someone that maybe isn't willing to do the work. So that's kind of a question for yourself. It's like, are you willing to go that extra mile? Maybe
Yeah.
literally at the Walmart parking lot, right? To really get
Right.
that drive, because it really does, I think. And I mean, you
Mhm.
do talk a lot about mindset, which I want to get into for sure in a bit. The idea that it all starts as well as outside of the arena. That
It does. It
yeah.
does. It's like
Yeah.
my dad told me. He said, if you see the trash needs to be took out, take it out. I don't care if it's somebody else's job, just do it, because that's going to make you a better person. If you see something needs to be done, just do it, because that's going to make more of a champion out of you, instead of, well, I don't want to do it, because that's my mom always told me that's going to be a reflection of how you ride.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
would say that.
I love that.
Slamming, she didn't like slamming cabinets. If you slammed the door or anything like that, you were in trouble. You had to do things soft and easy. She said that's how you're going to ride your horse. If you're rough away from that horse, you're going to be rough when you get around it. So
Mm-hmm.
we, so I had to be like soft and easy with everything. Even
Yeah.
even though I did have a temper and I could be a brat sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to deal with it myself, or go somewhere else and be a brat with
Mm-hmm.
myself. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do it around people, because
Mm-hmm.
my mom and dad, lots of discipline. Yes. He
Mm-hmm.
was a drill sergeant. My mom, she was real strict on, she liked horses to stand, and kids that didn't mind, she go, they need to just go to their room and stay for a while and think about what they need to do in life. And another thing she told me was, you're not going to really start rodeo until you're 18. She goes, you don't need to be a child doing this. You need to grow up first and then get into the adult world. She goes, because children, when they're too young, they get confused. And so she wouldn't let me do anything too young till I know 16 sounds young, but they were just letting me taste it a little bit, but they really didn't let me go till I was 18. And then she was with me the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I did really want to ask the influence your parents had on your writing, because you did mention them quite a lot. And I think that's
Yeah.
awesome, like the support and the lessons they gave you. For that example, though, like just of 16 versus 18, what do you think the difference was for yourself? Because now there's like young riders out there under 10 that are on these powerhouses of horses. So for you, what
Oh,
was that
yeah.
experience like that age gap of 16 versus 18 for you?
Well, when I was 16, I mean, you're kind of starting to grow up. You're not so much a child anymore, but you're still not really ready to make a lot of decisions, and I don't think you're really ready to get out into the adult world. My mom always said if you do it too young, you're going to burn out, and as you get older, you can have a lot of problems. Like sometimes you see that in childhood stars, when
Right.
they're great as an actor when they're younger, and as they grow up, then there's a lot of temptations that come there. But I think it's from 16 to 18. At 18, I made better decisions. I think I rode better.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't relying, I couldn't rely on anyone else to make sure my horse was okay. I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, you're going to get your parents, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. My parents told me, you're going to have to win if you want to do this, and you're going to have to pay your own vet bills, your own expenses, because we're not going to do it. So I knew then, I'm like, okay, I got to step this up a notch if I want to haul. And I've got to win because I can't haul. And so then I was able to take that kind of pressure. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing was handed to me. And so my parents, as a kid, when I did the play days, I mean, you're talking about small entry fees, not a lot of investment. But my dad told me this is kind of like a business. It's an investment. He said,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have to make it work or you can't do it. So and most everybody you used to see at a barrel race at a major rodeo, you knew that they were there because they were winning, because no one had enough money to just go blow it to say, hey, I entered, right? You
Mm-hmm.
knew when your competitors were there, you had to run tough because they were all winners. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, I got to step this up a notch. So I was also able to handle the pressure better, and I was able to handle the wins better just from 16 to 18, because through that from 16, 17, and 18, I felt like I was developing a lot
Mm-hmm.
to be able to handle more adult things. Whereas at
Yeah.
16, I'd have been a lot more emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just
Yes.
like you said, the lesson of your mom of acting more gracefully in everything you do, probably by the time you're 18, you're understanding that a little bit more, or actually like feeling that
Yes.
a bit more. So I would love
Yes.
to talk a little bit more about that, just because I fully believe like who you are as a person does reflect your performance. Not always, it seems like there's always those people that win and you're kind of like, what? But I really do
Uh-huh.
think like how you show up, or how you just show up with life in general, affects and shows in your results in the arena. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Oh, it definitely does, because you got to, winners, everybody knows you got to be a little bit arrogant to win. You got, because that's making you, that's like you're believing in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to be humble and you got to be nice. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell everybody, you're only as good as the horse you're on. So if you're on a top notch horse, you're going to look really great. But then when you don't have the top notch horse, you're going to look like the horse you're on, more or less. So they're going to
Mm-hmm.
humble you out pretty good. But yeah, when you go out in the arena, yeah, you should just, I always pray. I always have a lot. So I always need God's guidance, because I'm like, sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing. And always my biggest fear is always, I hope my horse doesn't forget the pattern, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, what? And I go, yeah. Sometimes you have that self-doubt, but I think that's what makes you better, because you don't go in there and go, oh, I've got this one. Because no, like my mom always said, there's three barrels to turn. And until you get around that third barrel and you do it really good, you don't have the barrel race won, because you see those people that get around the first two really good. And they, like, I got this one, and they quit riding, and then they screw up the third barrel and cost
Mm-hmm.
themselves the barrel race. So yeah, I think the person that you are outside the arena is going to have a big reflection of what you're on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like take Lane Frost, for example. He was a great person in and outside of the arena. We all have our flaws. We're all not perfect, but it's so much better if somebody's going to be a champion and a winner if they're happy, and you
Mm-hmm.
help other people and you talk to other people and you inspire them, because I think this is all about inspiring others. Hmm.
Totally. And I think as well, like I was kind of told where also your wins, like if you're a kind person and you're almost doing it not necessarily just for yourself, but like you said, as almost inspiration of showing people that the right way can win, like doing it kindly and correctly and authentically, or just with kindness and love up front, that
Yes.
can also win as well. And I think that is great that when you inspire those people, you're not just winning for yourself at that point, you're winning for others, and people really like to feel that connection and, like showing other people what's possible, that, hey, like you can do it this way and you can win doing it in a nice, kind, gentle, like pure-hearted way. I want to talk about, you just said how self-doubt helped you. Can you explain that
Hmm.
a little bit more?
I think we all have a weakness. A lot of people don't want to admit it, but yeah, sometimes when you have self-doubt, it makes you, I think, step up to the next level because you got enough fear. And my son loves boxing. And so a lot of the boxers always say turn fear into fire. Okay.
Mm.
So before you go make that run, of course, it's normal to be nervous. And the better horse you're on, the more nervous you're going to get because this horse can really clock and I better not screw it up. Because notice I say, I better not screw it up. The horse is going to do a good job. I got to stay out of the way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that self-doubt sometimes I think makes you keep that edge on you to where you compete better. If you just go out there and think, well, I got it won and you get arrogant, you don't have that edge on you. So at that point, I think you lose a little bit of what you need to win. Yeah.
Interesting. I like that. I have never heard it quite in that way before. So I think a lot of people, myself included, feels a lot of doubt with my ability or what I'm doing. And I think that it, like you just said, it is a good thing because then you're able to know that, hey, I don't have all the answers. Like I don't know everything. I don't have this barrel race won. And then you're able to, like you said, kind of dig in something inside of you to show up and really perform, knowing that, hey, like we don't know exactly how this is going to go. So I love that.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your experience going to the NFRs. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit to you turned 18 and then now you're experiencing what it's like at the pro level. Can we hear a little bit about that?
Well, I'll just say the first year that I went professional full time, I turned 18. Well, my birthday's in June, so mid year I turned 18. So I was still 17 when I started my NFR year, and I went to Denver, and of course it was a snowstorm, and my mom was with me, and it took us 36 hours to get to Denver, and it should have just took like 12, right? We got an ice snow, and nobody really knew weather forecast. Just went out and go, okay, we're going to go to Denver, right? And then you run into a little bit of snow, and before long, you're in major ice and snow, and so again, adverse conditions, but we made it. I won some money and stuff like that. So my next one's going to be San Antonio, Texas. I'm like, okay, I placed at Denver. A lot of tough stuff going on, made the short go, but I pulled through it. Now I go to San Antonio, win that one, go to Baton Rouge, Phoenix. I'm winning all them. Then all of a sudden I hit a cold streak for about 2 months. I mean, I can't win anything. It's like, how do you go from winning everything to winning almost nothing, right? This horse isn't firing. Something's off. Of course, nobody really knew what injections were, but my mom did massage therapy a lot. We had a great horseshoer, and we got his blood count checked. The way he was bred, he was very he was double bred Joe Reed is what he was. And so when you line breed like that, you can have a little bit of things that get a little off. Well, his blood count would get low, and I didn't know that. So we took him to the vet, got a checkup. He said, let's check his blood work, because this vet was kind of a racetrack vet. Sure enough, his blood count was low. So he gave him a couple of shots, and we could put him on some just red cells, something like that. And before long, he got back to clocking again. And so nobody had ever told me nothing about that. So that's something that we went through. And then as the year goes on, I think my scariest rodeo was Cheyenne. Even though I'd won a lot of major rodeos, I never will forget the morning at Cheyenne. And I'm like, I hope he turns the first barrel, because I'd heard these horror stories. If your horse has been on the track, since the first barrel sets by the track, they're going to see the track and they're going to run off, right? Well, you hear this and you're like, I wonder if my horse, again, self-doubt. And I remember I was the third runner that morning in slack at 8 a.m. And I thought, I just got to trust my training. That was what Wanda Bush, she was a great barrel racer. Trust your training. I remember, I'll never forget, they called my name and I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, I got to go. I didn't want to go, but I had to go. And I went out there and I won the go round when it was all over. I said, you know what? I'm dropping my hand and I'm just giving it to him. And that's what I did. We went out there and ran a pattern basically without me, I say, getting in his way. I'm not going to say I didn't do anything, because I stayed out of his way. So that's doing a lot. Because I think most barrel racers get in their horse's way. The last words I told myself when I made that run was stay out of his way and give it to him. And that's what I did and won the go round. I went, that wasn't hard after all. So then I ended up making the NFR that year, and I'm like scared to death again. My first run, and I run like a second off, and my horse pulls the shoe off. And I'm pretty upset. My dad goes, we'll get the shoe on. It'll be okay. Second round I placed. And after that, I placed in all the rounds, ran the fastest time, the most money, the most go rounds. Starting out, my first round being basically a disaster. But I knew, again, I had to put that behind me and focus ahead. I have 9 more runs. I got to focus on doing good
Mm-hmm.
in these. I'm not saying winning the next 9 runs, but I've got to try to place and do the best I can in the next 9 runs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Hmm.
That's amazing. I love that story. There's a lot
Yeah.
that I want to talk about, just even the idea of what you said in Cheyenne of trusting your training and also not getting in their way, which you said is very hard for barrel racers. So,
Yeah.
what are some things like with the trust aspect? How can we gain more trust? What does that really look like and feel like for you?
Well, basically, I think people, a lot of anxiety, keeping anxiety down. People have anxiety. At the clinic we were at in Tucson this weekend, I asked everybody, there's like, say, 20 girls there. How many of you have anxiety? Every one of them raise their hand. I'm like, oh, gee. Okay. First thing you got to do is breathe, stay calm, stay relaxed. My mom always told me, stay calm. It's okay. And just her saying that to me helped me a lot. She goes,
Mhm.
that horse knows what he's doing. You've trained him really good. So you got to just leave him alone and let him do his job. So having someone on the sideline like that, a coach, so my mom, I mean, that's the best coach in the world. I totally trust her.
Mhm.
And just hearing those words there, like I'd ask her, you think I can really run against the pros? Well, yeah, you're as good as any of them are, even though they're not treating you the best in the world and they're not being nice to you because you're winning. She goes, you're as good as any of them are. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. So she kept that confidence instilled in me. You got to have somebody to keep the confidence built up. And I think when you have the confidence, it's going to feed over to your horse. If you
Mhm.
lack confidence, that horse is going to lack it too. So
Mhm.
it's a team thing that you got to do for that horse. Train them correctly is the main thing too. I see a lot of people, they're struggling because they're in the horse's way. They're overtraining. I'll have to say the horse I won the most on probably trained me. I just showed him what I wanted, stayed out of his way, and he showed me what I needed to do.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. I said, I don't really need to be doing that much. This horse, I'm going to ride him like he's out in the pasture. I'm just
Mhm.
going to show him what I need, stay out of his way, and let him do his job.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best thing I told myself, because at that point, he wasn't a horse that you overbent in the neck, because if you did, he was going to swing his back in. He ran pretty straight. You just turned him with the reins and let him do his job. And he was actually that easy to ride. Most of the horses I've ever won on have always been that easy to ride. If they're hard to ride, I know I'm not going to win that much on them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that analogy. And I think I relate a lot to your training style. Like I remember seeing your article in the Barrel Horse News magazine, and I didn't clue in till I connected with you now that was your article, because
Uh-huh.
it's been out for quite a while, and that really shaped a lot of my riding style of it can be that simple, and like the straight lines, the square, just the approach, and just really keeping it that basic. So circling back to just saying how people overtrain, what do you think that looks like? Like, how would you describe overtraining or overriding versus maybe your method of teach them the job? And you said like your horse almost taught you what it needed in order to do the job right. So what are the differences?
The difference is, in this day and time on social media, you see so many training videos. By the time you're done watching them all, you're like, how do I need to train, right? So
Yeah.
you need to like not do too much of that. You need to find somebody that you can work with that'll give you that good set of basics that you can put on that horse. And my dad, stop straight, back straight, make sure you got good lead changes, and make sure you can move the horse's hip if you need to. Make sure the hip follows the shoulder and the shoulder follows the nose. That's all I basically do. I see so many people, they're like overbit. They've got them so broke down, they look like a Western pleasure horse. And God didn't create horses to travel like that. So they're not really broke in the pole. They're broke over in the neck. And so when they're given in the pole and they break over in the pole, they're just kind of given through their jaw. And so
Mhm.
you pick up and you feel them just give through the jaw, and their neck kind of stays straight. It doesn't come up in the air and it doesn't go down. It just stays level like out in the pasture. So I see everybody doing too many reverse arcs, too much lateral movement. The horse's feet get tangled up. That disengages the back end. Now all the weight's to the front end. Then they say the horse is pulling, so they overbreak the neck more to get more control. I don't like split reins. My mom, if I'd have rode in split reins, she'd have took them off and whipped me with them. Said, we're not in a Western pleasure class. She goes, You need to practice like you're going to compete. You
Mm.
don't train one way and then ride another way when you compete and then blame the horse for it.
Yeah.
So my mom, even at the NFR, she would grab some of them horses from the girls when they were mad and go, the horse didn't do it. You did it. Now you need to go sit down and think about it. And I'm going to hold your horse, and you need to go calm down and think about your next run, what you need to do different, because the horse didn't do anything you didn't tell the horse to do. Another thing I see when they do the reverse arcs, they crank the neck and the nose too close to the shoulder, and then they take the spur and stab the horse.
Yeah.
At that point, I would love to do that to someone. Let me like vice your neck down and then spur you in the rib cage and tell me why I would even work for you. There was someone at Ray Hunt, Tom Dorrance, one of those guys said, if a human did that to me, I would turn into I'd be the bronc of the year in rodeo. And that's kind of how I feel. I just turn into a bronc and go, there's no human going to ride me and torture me like this. Mm-hmm. And another thing, when you crank on their face that much, the jawbone, my dad taught me, a horse has the bars in their mouth. That's where there's no teeth, that open space on their bottom jaw. He said, if you pull on that and you bruise it up and get it tough, you have nothing left in that horse. So he taught me to pick up to the upper jaw, because he said you can't pull on it and hurt it. So when you pick up, you're only giving that horse a cue. You're not pulling, you're turning them on a cue. And so that's basically how I've always been taught to train a horse. Pick the inside rein up, they set the inside hind leg, they shape up underneath you. And then they'll tell you how much nose they need to give you, or they may not give you a lot of nose, you know? And so, yeah.
So it's a lot, would you say, because I really like the idea of kind of, you can teach yourself, like you can learn the basics, but then after that, I got caught up in a situation where I tried to ride like other people and learn their method and apply that. And I think I was skilled enough of a rider to do that, to be like, oh, I see what you're doing, I'm going to mimic you. And then I had all these issues because I really didn't understand the philosophy. So I had to backtrack a lot to learn what worked for me and like learn my style. And it sounds like you're kind of agreeing with that, or like the same idea of keeping it that simple, and also being able to kind of like self-teach yourself a little bit and do what let the horse even teach you in that regard. So you mentioned hand position a little bit. I'd love to chat a little bit about that. I never really thought about the whole like lifting versus like the roof of their mouth versus the bars. So when you are, let's say, and I love that you said it's more of a cue than a pull. And I think that's so key for people. So can you break that down a little bit of what you look for versus maybe what you see in other riders?
Well, I think the biggest thing at the clinics that I struggle with is people pulling back all the time, looking down, pulling back, holding their inside leg into the horse, slumped over. They don't carry their own body weight. When you're riding a horse, you've got to carry your own body weight. If you're just plopped down in the saddle pulling, that horse's back is going to get so sore just from you sitting on them all the time. And so I teach at my clinics, when you stop, breathe up. And when you breathe up, that takes the weight off the horse's back. They lift their belly, they lift their back, which that's working the top line, and then they drop their hocks. And so they learn that as you're going in the barrel, so I take my thumb and I always keep my thumb up. And so I pick up, and I say it's kind of like you're getting a little scoop of ice cream. You just flex your wrist a little bit. That horse will feel that little cue there. They'll set their inside hind leg, and you'll feel them soften their rib cage up, and you're not having to stab them with a spur and crank their head and get their feet out of balance. Because if you get their feet out of balance, then the horse is going to start a fight with you. Then they can't turn. They get on the front end. You got a bigger chance of falling down and just getting strung out all the way around the turn. So I basically have the barrel pattern set up. I tell them at the clinics. Between the barrels, it's like a racetrack. When you go in the barrel, you shape them up like a barrel horse. You pick up, get their nose a little bit, very soft. You'll feel them give that inside hind leg. Then you keep the shoulder and hip in line. Then when you get to that back side, you get parallel. You're almost setting them up like a cutting horse, going to turn back and catch a cow. So now you're turning into a game for them. So you get parallel on the back side. So they set their inside hind leg up underneath them. That's going to bring the shoulder up and set the inside hind leg to keep the collection there to drive them through the back side of the turn. So you have the power coming out. So you go from, and then so the back side, we do about a fourth of a roll back's all it is. I actually just turn back's what I say. So I go on the barrel, race horse, barrel horse, cutting horse, then a fourth of a turn like a reining horse. So you have 4 disciplines in less than a second to do. And I've learned all that. And I learned all that basic style like that from horses. I'd ask people And by the time I get done talking to a person, I'd be so confused. Like you say, I wouldn't even know how to ride. And if you ask 10 different people, they're going to tell you 10 different ways. And I'm like, there's got to be an easier way to do this, especially when I'm fixing a problem horse. I can't fix a problem horse bending them, flexing them, running them sideways. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when I started out with the squares. And I know squares have been around forever, but not so much in barrel racing. When I started teaching it, I taught it because I had to fix a problem, a blew up futurity horse, basically. That if you even thought about bending him, he would completely blow up, rear up, run off. So I said, we got to fix this horse. And everybody's like, well, squares have been around forever. Yeah, but nobody ever told me about it in barrel racing. So I thought, we're just going to ride straight lines and kind of make a square around the barrel for right now. Then we'll start putting that other method, which people don't realize. I go from the square to the barrel horse, cutting horse, reining horse turn. So then I break the square down into those three methods. And I always work them on a diagonal on the outside front leg to drive the inside behind them. And so when you're doing the square, there's a whole lot more to it than just making a square, because there's different setups for the turn and footwork you got to do on the horse to have that square and those points that you're hitting that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot. I would say just again, kind of like what you just said, there's a lot more than just a square. It's kind of like the intention behind it. Same as, let's say, a
Right.
counter arc. Like maybe there is a time and place to do a counter arc, but it's like, but what is your purpose with it? And does it align with what you're actually doing? Like you said, cranking their head, spurring them. Does that actually align with what you're actually trying to accomplish? And to me, like I
Right.
wouldn't be able to find an answer. Like I would be like, probably not. And to me, why I really enjoy your training style is that it makes sense. It's simple and it makes sense and it's just user friendly. So going to the squares, how did that help your futurity horse? And just even getting a blown up horse in general, like you said, you had an off the track, where a lot of people in my area for sure get off the track horses. So what is
Yeah.
that like when you get a horse that's maybe in that state? What's your process to get them just going better?
Yeah. So this girl had come to a clinic, and this was a blew up futurity horse. He was very small, 14 hands, quick and catty. A lot of people told her, well, you might as well give up on him. She'd paid a lot of money for him. You might as well give up on him. You can't fix him. Well, she come to my clinic. I said, look, it's going to take a year to fix him. This isn't going to be no overnight fix. I said, the first 6 months, we've got to basically start over with him, because this horse was so locked up in his hip. And when you'd even think about getting any nose on him, he would take his hip and push it to the inside, lock his hind leg up. That's when he was going to rear with you. Okay. I said, the first thing we got to do is unlock his hip and his hind leg. And he's got to find out, when we ask him to give to the bit pressure and just give his nose a little bit, that he doesn't have to go into panic mode, because to him, that was a bad thing. To him, that was, oh, I'm fixing to get pulled on. This is not going to be fun. I hate turning the barrel. He'd get to the barrel, the anxiety on this horse was unreal. He would come in the arena, rear up, strike at people. We ended up doing an article on it in the Quarter Horse Journal a few years back, and we ended up getting that horse fixed. Lots of straight lines, teaching him to give to the bit in your hand. Start out with the ring bit, give his nose to the inside, move forward in your hand, work on a diagonal, move your hip, go forward. And when you move the hip, it's only about 2 steps to teach him to give the hind leg, and then go forward immediately when you give me that leg. That got him out of the rearing up. The way I get a horse out of rearing up is I got to get their nose, move their hind leg 2 steps to just a little bit, kind of under and to the side. When I feel that second step give, then I can push them forward. Then the hip's unlocked. So horses rear up because when they lock their hip up and they're sore in their hip joint, everybody thinks it's the hocks when it's actually up in that whole hip area. So when that's locked up, you got major problems. So that's what we had to do, is unlock his hip, teach him to give in the face, soft to the hand. And then we eventually put him on squares. And then I have obstacle course that I do at all my clinics. It has a little jump, serpentine poles for lead changes, a big square that you'll go around it twice through the center. The big square is going to keep that straight line on a diagonal again. And then then we have a little barrel pattern set up at the end where you can't get any speed really. I mean, it's only like 2 strides between the barrels. And we do that. I condense that down to really show you where your flaws are in your riding, because you don't have time to screw up in that. If you do, you're not going to make the next barrel. Most people come out of the barrel, they pull straight back, the horse goes sideways. Well, you're not going to get over the second barrel if you're doing that on this little tiny pattern. So we break the whole barrel pattern down to the point that it's so easy for the horse, they pick it up quicker than the human. Yeah. And so then they know where to change leads, where to set their hip, where to set their hind leg. Once we taught this horse that, he picked it up. he just completely made a 360. He's like, oh, this is easy. It doesn't hurt. And I understand what you want. Before it hurt, he didn't understand it, and it was hard for him to do. So, of course, he's not going to run the barrels good if he's got those three things going on that's not good.
Yeah.
And,
And just
we see all the winning runs, and we're like, oh, I want to do that. Well, to get those winning runs, you got to stay out of the horse's way and make it pretty easy. If you're fighting with that horse, believe you me, your horse isn't liking any better than you are. They don't like it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point to make as well, is keeping that in the forefront of your training and your riding of how can I make my horse enjoy it? How can I make clear communication that they understand, and just eliminating that anxiety. So
Oh, yeah.
when you get a
Mhm.
horse like that, what do you think are the reasons that it is caused? Like, to get a horse that's just so blown up, like how can we avoid maybe getting a horse and we start to make it not like its job, and we start to make it have a lot of anxiety? Like, how can we reverse those effects, or how can we just eliminate them from happening?
Well, when I was a kid, if I didn't run barrels good and the problem started, I wasn't allowed to run barrels. My dad made me do a basic reining pattern, and that was you go down, you get on the rail, and you ride about halfway around down the arena. You stop straight, you back straight, and you stand square for about a minute. You don't move. Then you go to the middle of the arena and you do a couple circles to the right in the correct lead, front and back. Then you break, then you transition down to a trot. Then you'll go to the lope, and then you will do two to the left, a big and a little one. Then you transition down, then you'll do a straight line to one end of the arena, and you stop, and you have to do a roll back one direction. You go down the other end of the arena the same way, and you do another roll back. That's how I was programmed as a kid. Okay. I say program because it's like, you're not doing the barrel pattern if you can't do this basic reining pattern. It's very basic. And if you can't do that with a horse with no anxiety, you're going to sit out here and do this. And when this becomes easy, then we'll go back to the barrel pattern. So the first thing I do if a horse has anxiety is I take them off the barrels and I do basic things with them. Go out and open gates up, not just trail ride. I put a little pressure on them when I'm doing it. Open gates up, move your hip, move your hind leg under you twice, go forward into my hand. So I go take all those things I need on that barrel pattern, and I take it away from the barrel pattern, get the horse doing it easy. Start out slow, then I start adding a little pressure to that reining pattern too. I'll start out walking, trotting, loping, then I'll actually put it into a pretty fast pace. And at the same time, this is going to help me bring my anxiety down and make me want to run barrels again and appreciate it. Because when you just everything's barrel racing all the time, I don't think you really appreciate it anymore. I think you just thank God that everybody owes this to me. I'm great and I get this. I'm going to run barrels all I want. No, sometimes you got to take yourself away from that environment and you got to go back to the basics. And I pray a lot too. I'm like, I've helped so many people with so many horses. There were times I was like, I really don't know what to do with this horse. God, you've got to help me with this. And guess what? It may be a week, it may be a month. All of a sudden the answer would come. And guess what? It was so easy because it's like God created them. So why don't we ask him for more help instead of asking people for help all the time? And he always gives me the answer. Here's what you need to do. The main thing is being at peace. Because my mom always told me, all you are around a horse is energy. So what you come, that energy that you're bringing to that horse is going to be a reflection of how you're going to do. She goes, so if you need to change your energy if you want things to get better. Okay. So that's anger, anxiety, any of that kind of stuff. So she taught me, calm your energy down to get better at what you're doing. She loved the massage therapy. She did that years ago on all our horses. And everybody goes, what is she massaging horses for? Is she some voodoo lady or something? This was long before anybody even knew what it was. And I told her, I said, you need to put a school in for this. Because she knew exactly. And she would be out there for 2 hours. She didn't use no machine. She'd be out there 2 hours just playing with these horses. And she would do their hooves, their legs. She would even do their ears, their lips, their mouths. She'd have them breathing so deep and all that bad energy coming out, as she called it, and letting the good energy come back to them to release all that soreness. And she had her little lotions and potions, but boy, those horses always ran good after she worked on them. And she'd always make them stand. She always made them do groundwork. She said, if they can't stand at the trailer and they can't stand when you're talking to someone, she always had a little switch too. They don't stand, they're going to get their ankles cracked, right? And it's like, okay. And that horse would see my mom go, I'm not moving. Because I know they knew discipline, right? Horses know if you give boundaries or not. If you give no boundaries, they have none, they're going to be bad. And
Mm-hmm.
at the clinics, that's one thing that I have to deal with is I'm like, we're at a barrel racing clinic, but I'm also having to discipline a lot of horses at the same time that people let them just do whatever they want to do. My horse didn't. I said, well, your horse knows you're not going to get them to do it. They know that there's no boundaries. They're just going to do whatever they want, just like a kid in a grocery store. There's a lot of kids act up because the parents have no boundaries for them. So when there's no discipline or boundaries, and I tell people there's a difference between abuse and discipline, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
don't go out and beat on a horse, spur them. You go out there and you say, set them in the ground, back them a couple of steps and say, hey, stop and stand here a minute. And I tell people that in a barrel pattern, anywhere in that barrel pattern, you're having problems, just stop, get your horse square back on their feet, get their hip and shoulder in line. Just take a minute, see where you're at, think about what you want to do when you go to your next point of that barrel pattern, and that helps people a lot. When I tell them to stop, stand square, we're going to repeat the same thing over till we get it correct. And a lot of times the riders I have to fix because they're pulling back, they're rolling their hip out, they throw their hip to the outside, they drop their hip to the inside, they're looking down, they're giving these horses all these mixed signals, and the horse is reacting to them. But people blame the horse, and I'm like, you're the one causing it all. So I said, I need to come out with seat zapper, and when you guys sit in that saddle and you roll your hips and get your butt zapped, you'll get back in the middle of the saddle. So many people ride crooked and they don't even know it. It's really sad because they're bending and pulling so much on these horses. They're shifting their weight to the outside, not knowing it. And these horses are tracking that way. They're teaching them how to track that way, but the person doesn't know it. And the horse doesn't know any better because that's what they're being taught.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just amazing what
Yeah.
people can do and not even know it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, there's lots that I want to talk about with all that you just
Yeah.
said. Going to
Yeah.
that concept though, I always believe that my body weighs a lot more than my hand strength. So meaning like my body's always going to win. If I'm pulling and doing all this stuff, it's like, what's my body actually saying? Because the horse is going to feel that a lot more than me trying to be like, oh, in my mind, when I pick up and do this and ask for all this stuff, I want this response. But to the horse, they're feeling what your body's saying. And I just think it's a good reminder for people, again, to have that intention with what their body's telling the horse, because the body
Yes.
awareness is huge, like you just said. Is there any things that we could do just to dive into that a little bit more? That when you see someone riding crooked, are there any good tactics that you found helped people to get more understanding of, let's say, even their center of gravity and just staying more centered and aware of how they're cueing their horse with their body?
Well, my dad told me when I started out as a kid, he goes, always keep your spine aligned with your horse's spine. So your spine should be centered with your horse's spine, and keep your chin level, your eyes up. Okay. And don't be leaning in, don't be leaning out. I know some people say step out as you go into a barrel. A horse is going to pull you to the outside as they're turning. You don't need to be stepping out there and pulling, more weight out there. And when you hit the backside of the barrel, you got to reset your hips. And so if you feel all that weight on that outside stirrup, you're going to have to step a little bit to the inside to center your weight back up. So if I feel myself getting pulled in or out, I'm like, okay, spine back centered with my horses. That was probably the best thing my dad ever said. Keep your body alignment correct by feeling your spine lined up with your horse's spine, eyes level, chin up, and look between the horse's ears like a windshield. Don't be looking down at the ground. There's nothing there. If I want to go a horse out, I look to the outside ear. If I want to bring a horse in, I look to the inside ear. If I want to go straight, I look between the ears. And so that's what we teach at the clinics. And so if a rider's hanging off to the side and they don't realize it, we'll have to go over there, push their hip back up. They're like, wow, I didn't even know I was doing that. So sometimes you just got to have somebody watch you and help you with it. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. It's so simple. Like just even having the intention of where you're looking is so, I mean, we do it without thinking every day, all day, but then having that intentionality to be like, look exactly where you want to go. And it's so subtle, but again, going to like the energy concept, just that energy
Right.
shift of where you're looking, the horse is like responding. Like you guys are so in sync in that moment to be like working as that team. And I mean, that's what we want. Like we want that simplicity, but maybe people think it's like so much harder than it has to be.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It doesn't have, and when a horse is cutting in on you, you don't want to pick that inside rein up and look down because I tell everybody, what's the first thing a jockey does after they win a race? They stand up and bring the reins up. That tells the horse to quit running. Well, if you're going in a barrel and you're picking that rein up too high, riding with your hands too high, to a horse, that means to slow down. You got to keep your hands even with their neck and ride like a jockey and be pushing forward all the time. And look to that outside ear, because that's going to help keep your body up and centered on that horse. If you pick up and look down and in, and that drops all your weight to the inside, that horse is going to dump on that inside front leg, all that weight. Well, now you just you're going to soar them up and throw their shoulders out of place, right? Now you're going to have to go to the chiropractor or vet, because you just threw that weight to that front inside leg. Now you're disengaging the back end. You're going to throw the horse on the wrong lead in the back. Now they're going to sling sideways. Now you just pop their hips out. Their hocks just got sore. Their stifles are probably really hurting at this point, and their back is probably out of place. Just riding them incorrectly. And the biggest thing my mom always said, asked her one time, I said, all the barrel races you've watched, what was the number one thing you saw? She said, people cutting barrels off. She goes, they will not ride by the barrel. They start anticipating and cutting the turn off long before they get there. Then they blame the horse. They're picking up, they're looking down, their weight's they're leaning in or they're pulling out, and it's like all those things are a big no on a horse. You just got to become a part of that horse and stay centered and ride forward.
Right.
Yes.
It makes sense. So forward momentum, and just like what your mom said about cutting them off. So would your fix be just that simply of looking to the outside of the ear, staying centered and driving forward?
We have other things we do, like coming off the first barrel. We had one horse last weekend going to the first barrel. He was ducking it. She was running straight at it. A girl told her to run straight at that first barrel. That's how he's trained. Well, she would run straight at it about halfway. Then she'd look down, pick up, and he'd duck off. She goes, this is what he's doing. I can't get him to the barrel. I said, okay, we're going to have to do the extreme with you. You're going to have to look at the third barrel and look to the outside ear, and don't even think about coming across here. And I had a pole set out there a good 6 or 8 foot away from that first barrel. You're going to have to ride toward the third barrel. You're going to have to barely pick up, and you're going to have to ride him this far out on this barrel right now till you break your habit. It's not him. I said, he's going to be I can fix a horse pretty easy. I can't fix a person as easy. So I have to put everything to the extreme with them. So to get her to do that, I had to set that out 6 to 8 feet away from the barrel. Everybody goes, oh, you got to work in the same spot all the time. No, you don't. The horse is overturning, cutting me off. I'm going to work a bigger pocket, or I may not even turn the barrel. I may just go halfway to it. Like if they got dog bar in them or something, if they get too cowy on me, I run them off. I'm like, now you're not turning. You think you're going to turn. Now you're not turning. Now, once they think they're going to run off, now we're going to start turning again. So depending on the horse, I change them up. And I've seen people at the NFR do that. I'm like, okay, one horse was cutting in on the first barrel. The girl's running him up pin, won't even let him, turn the first barrel. I'm like, wonder if he'll run off tonight. No, he went out there and turned and gave her the room she needed. She had to run him off to keep him that space to get around that barrel. So we just do different things according to what the horse is doing. The biggest thing I have to do is let that horse know they're not going to bully me, because me being on the ground, I teach from the ground, because my dad told me, Wanda Bush told me years ago, Connie, don't get on them horses. They're dangerous, because she got hurt a couple of times. And I said, okay, so now I ride them. I can pretty much ride a horse from the ground. I've rode so many and taught so much and have been taught about horses. I can pretty much watch their footwork and tell you what they're going to do. But mainly the rider, I can tell you, that horse is fixing to do this or that because you just did. They're going to react to you. They react to your reaction. Yeah. So people tightening up. And I said, you're going to look at the barrel when you're running. That's human nature. But when you're practicing, I tell them to look to the outside ear, so you're not looking down at it so much, anticipating it. You're trying to train your eyes where you want to go. I don't like picking an object out on the fence, because you have soft eyes and you have hard eyes. To me, when you pick something on the fence, it gives you a hard eyes, and it makes you tense up. When I connect to my horse's ears, I ride the outside ear, my eyes stay soft, and I stay connected to the horse, because I'm trying to keep a connection all the time. I don't want anything to disconnect, or the problem's going to happen.
Yeah. I like that. I can even feel the difference in my head thinking, if I had an anticipation problem, look at the fence, and it's like you're so fixated on that, but you're actually missing the point of the barrel race, where thinking in my head right now of looking at the outside ear, it's like, yeah, we're more in sync and we're actually doing the pattern together, not like bracing about even looking at the fence, you're still going to anticipate. So I really like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Small little
Yeah.
change makes a huge difference of our
Yes.
energy, our intention, how we feel about the thing. And you just said, like helping people is a lot harder than the horse. And going back to the idea of even just stopping for a minute, letting the person maybe decompress and think about that. What do you think that benefit is? And how have you
Oh,
seen that affect the rider?
we do that a lot at the clinics. We do a parallel stop on the back side of the barrel. Everybody goes, "Why don't you stop before the barrel?" I said, "I don't want a horse anticipating. I want them to learn how to get their footwork set up and the transitions that make in the footwork." So I slow their feet down on the approach. Like when I say slow their feet down, lope, trot, walk, stop. I let them know as I pick this rein up, I need you to set your feet and get them adjusted to where when we go to this barrel, you got that hind leg set on the backside. We do a lot of stops parallel on the backside because that's a hot spot on a barrel horse because they're anticipating turning and running the next barrel. The
Mm-hmm.
first time we have them do that, they throw a fit. These horses are mad. They're like, "Why are we doing this? I should be turning and going." Horses take 3 times and they figured out the third time, they're taking a deep breath, standing, going, "Thank you." Even their eyes have less stress. In the beginning, their eyes are so stressed out. They're so tense. But by the third time, the horses completely start changing, going, "Thank you for showing my rider this." And then we show them how to, after we stop, we always go forward 2 steps because if you turn when you're stopped, you're going to swing their butt. So I said, you got to go forward 2 steps to get the forward motion back so you can turn the shoulder to drive them off the inside hind leg. And so once you learn to feel that, you're like, wow, the horse turned theirself at that point because horses work on a diagonal. So for me to turn their shoulder, if I'm at the right barrel, I got to bring the inside hind leg up underneath them so they can pull their outside shoulder around. And so when I have that footwork correct, the horse is going to turn herself. I no longer even have to pull on them. I just got them with the reins. The reins are just there like a steering wheel on a car, power steering, and I'm barely going to move my hand to get that movement. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Their ears are
Amazing.
the windshield. The reins are like the steering wheel on a car. So with power steering, if you had manual steering, it's a little harder to steer. But we
Mm-hmm.
all have power steering these days. So it's very, and I tell people to relate it like that. You have power steering on this horse. This should not be manual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's kind of funny, like the car analogies, because some of the lessons I give, maybe you'd agree or not, but I tell people like when they're steering, it's like steer with your hips. And it's like your hips are your headlights. So it's like, where are your headlights
Yeah.
going? Like figure that
Yeah.
out. And it's kind of the eye thing. It's like where your eye's going, your whole body's gonna follow.
Your
And if
body
your
goes with
body's,
it.
yeah, and I think that's
Yeah, your
amazing.
body goes with, yeah, your eyes. So where you take your, that's why I say going in the second barrel, when you barely move your hand, you look to the outside ear, it just took my body there. I've got this horse blocked off over here. It's like, we're not turning yet. I'm holding you. And
Yeah.
now when I point my thumb a little bit and open the inside of my body up a little bit, now you can come in here.
Hmm.
So it kind of blocks them off is what it does. You're just
Yeah.
blocking them with your hip, shoulder, because your eyes are looking over there. So it brings your hips and shoulder and your whole body that
Yeah.
direction.
I love
Yeah.
that. It's so subtle, but so effective. And
Yes.
that's where you could probably do a run and people are like, it looks like you're doing nothing. But it's like you are
Yeah.
doing a lot, but it doesn't have to, like you said, power steering. It could be that easy. Like it can be
Yeah.
that discreet because we know horses feel everything. Like they're so touchy. But yet we
Right.
feel like we need to use so much force and brace to get this response from them. But I think going back to what you said, it's like a human problem that we feel we have to do that we feel
Well,
like,
you're right about that. And sometimes I look at people, and I'm not being ugly, but I look at people and go, man, if I was in a stall and they were coming out to ride me and torture me, again, I do like Ray Hunt said, I just turned into the Bronc of the Year. Because you look at humans sometimes and they can have a very bad attitude, and they were mad at the horse from the day before because they didn't get what they wanted out of the horse. They're like, oh, that horse is going to get it tomorrow. And that's when I say, no, you need to sit down and think about maybe you need to get it. Maybe you need to see what you're doing. Because
Mhm.
I tell people, if you keep getting on horses and they're doing the same thing wrong and you're having problems, you need to look at yourself because you're carrying that into that horse.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to learn. That one time I thought it was the horse. My mom, no, it's not the horse, it's you. Yeah, horses, they challenge you some. Some are easy to train, some are hard. But a horse is very basic. And if you just put great basics on them, they usually come around pretty easy because you're not requiring so much. Humans,
Mhm.
since they could control computers, humans micromanage everything. Well, you can't do that with the animal.
Mhm.
It just doesn't work,
Mhm.
you know. And so the more anger you carry with you, the more that horse is going to carry.
Yeah.
So it's just all feeding into it.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I did want to go back on is just you said about the energy, the horses feel your energy and how you're
Uh-huh.
approaching it. So can you break that down a little bit more of just the importance of how you show up and how that affects your horses?
How you show up, like at a barrel race,
Or let's say training, or just like being intentional with your energy, having like, and even going to the example of questioning things or looking to God for answers or looking really within yourself for those answers. Can you talk a little bit about that and just how important that is for your training?
well, I tell everybody at the clinics, first of all, if you've been in an argument with somebody or you're in a bad mood or something, just stay away from your horse until you get some of that stuff worked out. If you're having a bad day, don't take it out on the animal because it's just going to create more problems and you're going to get more frustrated. So when I go out around the horses and stuff, I try to everything's got to be kind of like peaceful. Like kids, when kids go out around horses, their attitude is, oh, we get to ride and they're happy, right? Adults sometimes not so much. They get so into training and having this image and stuff that it becomes a miserable thing then. And so I tell everybody, just be more like a kid. Go out there and enjoy it, have that kind of attitude and don't carry all the anxiety and the problems with you out there. Because kids don't have problems. They let their parents are dealing with them, really in life. I mean, kids have a few, but when it comes time to riding their horses, they kind of forget about them. They're like, I'm out here with the horse. They just cleared their whole mind out because I'm going to have fun and be with my horse and get to run barrels and to heck with everything else. Whereas adults don't do that. Adults go out there and they continue to think about daily life and all the things. And I've got 10 more horses to ride. I got to hurry up and ride this one. Well, then don't ride so many. Don't ride so many horses.
Yeah.
If it's frustrating you that bad, take less horses and spend more time with yourself and with that horse. Because I'm saying this because I've been through it before. And that's how I learned how to deal with it. Sometimes we just try to get too much going on in life and you just can't handle everything. So then just riding a horse becomes hard at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's true. And having that balance for sure with everything you do in life, I think, and setting you and your horse up for success. I also believe of it starts with you, like how you are presenting the situation. And even as far as going, you said earlier of like just in a spiritual sense, because I really think horses are a gateway for that for us of they can be such a mirror and a teacher for us if we allow it, and they can show us just like maybe our own weaknesses or things we need to work on, and looking at the horses in that way of, hey, like, what can this teach me today? Instead of like, I'm going to teach my horse and I want to get XYZ done. I feel like it has such a different flavor to it. And maybe people are really quick to be like, we have to get this accomplished, but they're missing kind of the whole point of what horses really bring us.
That's very true. That's very true. And you can learn so much from the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And people always think, I got to teach the horse. Well, maybe you need to step back and let the horse teach you. Like I said, best ones I've trained, I just kind of stayed out of their way. I just showed them the pattern and all the correct things to do. And then I just let them show me what they needed from there. Of course, I have to tune them up once in a while. If they start cutting me off or not setting up for their turn to turn, I don't say right before a barrel. I just say setting up before the turn because I need that transition to happen. Maybe they're not running. Maybe I need to just go breeze them out and take them off the barrels again. And just don't overwork your horse. Some people go, well, I don't work my horse on barrels at home. I'm like, yeah, but you're out there doing so many drills. The barrels might even be better because you're drilling your horse to death now. Over bending, over flexing, moving lateral, reverse arcs, all that stuff. I'm like, you can't do that every day to a horse because they're going to finally give up because you take their heart out of them. You can't, when they lose their heart, you basically lose the horse. You can't take that away from them.
And also in that regard, it's kind of letting the horse move naturally how they're going to, because in a barrel race, they're naturally going to move in ways. And you said it earlier about using split reins versus your running reins. And I find that such a good concept and something that maybe people need to think about, because I will go into my running reins and I train a lot in my running reins for futurity horses because I know when I go to split reins versus that, it's a totally different feel. And I ride better in my gaming reins, like my running reins, because it's like, balance, I have more alignment with me because I can't rely on the reins to do everything. And,
Right.
you see people, maybe they train a certain way, or let's say an example being they use like draw reins in their
Uh-huh.
exhibitions, and then they
Yes.
go do their run in their running reins. And it's like,
Right.
to me, like, what do you think about that? Like, or even like training aids, like, do you think there's a time and place, or are you for or against?
Again, you got to think about what it's doing to the horse's mouth. These people go, well, I don't use a tie down. I'm like, no, but you've got draw reins on and you're tying your horse's jawbone down. And so when you bruise up the bars of their mouth, you get their jawbone sore. And we deal with that at the clinic. So I've had horses there's so much stress and anxiety. I'm like, this horse needs the bit took off. And I've got a hackamore that I kind of designed to help for horses like that. It's very lightweight, but it gets the horse to set on their back end and really turn nice. It doesn't have a lot of movement to it. That's why I'm saying I designed it, because so many of these hackamores, they move everywhere, and these horses are like, what? So they're scared of them.
Mm.
Sometimes I do that because these horses are in so much pain with their jawbone from being pulled on. Their bottom jaw's so bruised up, then they get TMJ, which goes in the pole, then which goes into the whole body. So if you've got their mouth that restricted, they probably don't want to turn the barrel because they're hurting just from you. Like I tell people, you go to the dentist, do you know how bad like a tooth pulled? Or one kid told me when I explained it to her, a kid told me, she goes, that's how my mouth felt when I got braces. She goes, it
Mm.
hurt. I said, it's the same thing. When you tie that horse's jawbone down with draw reins, or you've got a big heavy bit and the bit's too tight in their mouth, I've always been the person, you just touch the corners of the mouth, no smile, two fingers under the curb chain. I've never pulled a bit up tight in the horse's mouth. And I
Mhm.
had a bit maker tell me one time, he said, the good concept is tell people put jeans on too tight. When you wear your jeans too tight, at some point you're going to have to undo them because they're going to start bothering you. When you put a
Mm.
bit in a horse's mouth too tight, that's kind of the same concept. But then
Mhm.
when it's too tight and you're pulling on the jawbone, now you're double. I mean, everything's going to start escalating. Bits that are too heavy. Um, at the clinics, people come out there, they're going to work in this real heavy bit doing their slow work. I said, you might be able to get away with running with that, but that has so much weight in it. That horse's bottom jaw is so bruised up. This horse isn't going to want to come in the arena before long.
Huh.
And I got to go get his hocks. I said, it's not the hocks. I said, the horse is hurting in its bottom jaw because this bit is laying on it and it's bruised up. You can take the bit off and the horse is like, they take this huge breath. So we'll either put a little lightweight stabilizer bit of mine on, or I might try the little hackamore if their mouth is really bruised and the horse is completely changed. I mean, all the anxiety's gone. They're not chomping anymore. They're not so mad. It's like people go, well, I never thought about that. And I go, well, just think about carrying that much weight in your mouth, how you would feel. Or if
Right.
somebody tied your mouth, I tell people, if you would not do that to yourself, don't do it to the horse. So I
Mhm.
said, I'm to the point I feel like getting a pair of spurs and gouging people with them and go, now, how does that feel? Right? Go do it to yourself. Now, why are you doing it to your horse? Yeah, I
Mhm.
use spurs at the right time. If I need to get a little speed out of a horse, I'll use a real light rowel spur, but I don't train with them and poke on them all the time. I teach them to move off my energy and my body,
Mhm.
basically. And I might get a little bat and pop them once in a while and get moving. Don't come over here because this is what's going to be waiting for you. So I intimidate them a little bit, but no, I'm not abusive. I don't spur them. I don't tie their mouths down. I will use a tie down. I call it a nose balancer, basically, to teach them when I pick my hand up, just hold your nose still. I don't need you flipping it up in the air, telling me, oh, well, I'm just going to be a brat today. Okay, so I'll do something about it. But I'm not going to tie their mouth down if they're flipping their nose. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. So humans even confuse me. The things I see, what they do to horses, I'm like, now I'm confused because why are you doing that?
Mhm.
That doesn't even make sense because now you're going to make another problem on top of the problem you got. Yeah.
Mhm. I
So,
love that. Just
yeah.
thinking of not doing something to a horse that you wouldn't want done to yourself. Simple concept, but
Yeah.
something to really, I think, keep in mind when people get in fights with their horses, even at a barrel race, like I see it sometimes of really fighting with their horse. And then right before the run, it's like, I already know how their run's going to go based on
Yeah.
the energy, based on like the
Yeah.
energies, and also just like, yeah, like the demeanor behind it. And I guess maybe people can start realizing, would I want to be treated this way? Am I actually understanding the animal? And if you can say yes, which I don't think you could, then continue on. But for
Right.
the most part, it's like you have to have that accountability. Um,
Yes, you do.
yeah, there's one other question that I wanted to talk about because you do a lot of clinics now, and I think clinics are amazing for just, you're traveling all over. I think you're helping so many people and so many horses with your knowledge and wisdom. Your clinics are called No Excuses. Can you tell us a
Right.
little bit about what that means for you?
Well, again, we're always talking about when we talk to someone, they'll always make an excuse first thing. Why it's not happening.
Mm.
And so when you first thing you do is you make an I like we say no excuses, and my friend Natasha, she kind of came up with that logo. She said because people every time we say something, they'll have an excuse for what they do. And so Natasha coordinates my clinics and does an amazing job for me and helps me out a lot. And she so that's kind of how that evolved. And so every time somebody says something, you're making an excuse. You need to be aware of that. Don't make an excuse. Try to find a solution to it and fix the problem and do something about it. Yeah.
Hmm. I like
So
that.
that's why
Just,
we
yeah.
mhm.
Would you say
No,
it has to do with like accountability as a rider?
yes. And as a winner, you're not going to make excuses. You're going to find a solution. You're going to fix it. Because every
Mm,
time you make an excuse, you're coming up with a reason why you can't win.
yeah.
You're justifying it basically. And it's like, I don't want to justify why I can't win. I want to go figure out a way to win. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to make an excuse for not winning anything.
Hmm.
Well, I didn't feel good today, or my horse, I think I got to get my horses, the hocks injected. I hear that so much. And I'm like, my mom goes, how did years ago all these horses run and get hauled for millions of years? And all of a sudden now you got to have injections and everything. How's this happening? Yeah, there's a time and a place for injections. Have I ever done them? No, even on my top notch horses, never did. I ran them correctly. I had a great shoer. My
Mm,
tack all fit good, and I kept my weight and balance correct. I think when you throw the weight and balance into it, you're going to soar a horse up real quick. And
hmm.
I don't like square toe. Again, square toes are for a time and a place. A horse's foot is round. My horse's feet stay round. I'm not putting square toes on them. My fastest horses, I've ran, high 16s on standard patterns. They had round toed shoes on. They
Hmm.
go, well, they're going to break over quicker. Well, I know people that's done that. And guess what? They broke over quicker and broke their horse's front end down. Can't run
Hmm.
them anymore. So
Hmm.
you got to be real careful with all these fads and trends and things. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a
I'd
ton
say,
of them.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And that even goes back to what we said about different training concepts online. And then eventually, like, hey, I don't even know what to do anymore because there's so much
Yeah,
information where I think what you said is a good point a little earlier is just about listening to the horse first and
right.
foremost, keeping it natural, what the horse
Huh?
naturally is ability, like keeping it just so simple and natural for them that there's no room for those breakdowns because you're allowing the horse to work how it naturally is intended to. And you're,
Yes,
in a way, you're just teaching it to do a job, but you're not interfering with its natural movement and just natural tendencies as a horse. Like we're very much like respect the horse as it is, and let's get the most out of that particular horse, get it to use most effectively and efficiently as possible. And I think that's a
yes,
great thing.
yes.
Hmm.
And when a horse gets to a barrel, it ought to be fun. The turn should be
Hmm.
fun. You shouldn't be dreading it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For
If you're
sure.
dreading it, you need to change something.
Yeah. Awesome. This was a really good conversation. I want to end it off with one final piece of advice or idea or concept that you would like more people to know. What would it be?
One concept, I would say straight lines. Every time you get in a bind, just stop, straighten your horse up and get them square on their feet and just stop and think about where you're at and
Hmm.
feel where those horses, the footwork's going. Like if they're stepping out sideways or they're stepping in, that's always been my biggest thing. My pet peeve is where's a horse stepping at? Where are they using their feet?
Hmm.
So I just stop, square them up, take a deep breath and go, now let's just track forward and see what's going to happen next.
Okay, perfect. And
Yeah.
now a piece of advice for, let's say, our mindset and just showing up as the performer and competitor that we want to be.
Oh, something like my mom would say, you're here to win. You're not here to listen to other people's ideas and put doubt in yourself. Go out there and ride your horse the way you trained your horse and trust your training.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Love it. It's so short, but so powerful and also
Yes.
quite hard to it can be like that can be a full journey just to apply that. But I think it is
Oh, yeah.
nice and short and sweet and yeah, very
My mom
awesome.
was always good because if I went out and made a mistake or I did something kind of different, she'd go, "Why'd you do that?" And I'd say, "Well, such and such told me I ought to try it." Well, where are they at, right? After she
Yeah.
got done chewing them out, nobody come up and tell me to be trying different maneuvers out there running the barrel pattern. Grab the outside rein on the backside of the first barrel to move over and get your horse straight. And somebody told me that one year at the NFR, and I did that. I tried it. I'm like, I don't know why I did it. They implanted it in my mind, right? So since it was there, it just kind of happened. Oh, did she get mad? She said, "Who told you that?" And chewed them out. And she goes, "If I want your advice, I'll ask you for it. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut." And I
Love
tell
it.
people that all the time. Just keep your mouth shut and don't talk about other people. Leave people alone.
Yeah.
Go try to find somebody that really cares,
Yeah.
and they're not out for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like with that, it's trusting yourself. Like don't take maybe there's a balance of listening to other people and taking advice, but also staying true to yourself of what you know is correct and not doubting, going back to like the self-doubt, not doubting yourself because someone gives you a different idea and then you doubt all your training. Cause it's like, then what do you have to
Yes.
fall back on when something goes wrong? Then you don't even have yourself to fall back on because now you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So,
Right. And everybody has their own way of doing things.
mhm.
But I was taught you can't beat basics. Always go back to the basics when you're stuck,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can learn something from everybody. It can be good or bad. You're
Yeah.
hoping it's good, but sometimes just somebody's little word like Wanda Bush, trust your training.
Mhm.
Dale Urey, he always said a winning barrel horse, it's just a runaway. Basically, they're
Mhm.
just a runaway horse that you're trusting your training for all that to kick in.
Yeah.
So
And that's
people like that saying just little things like that, you're like, wow, they have that same feeling too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that sounds fun. Thinking
A
like your horse is
control.
a runaway and just trust it. Like
Yeah.
that sounds like the fun thing that we like about barrel racing is being a little bit
Right.
out of control, but it all just comes together
Like
and
he
we're
said,
allowing it.
a controlled runaway. That's what he
Yeah.
said. Controlled runaway, Wanda Bush, trust your training. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you can learn something from anybody, just a few little words like that. You're like small words, but pretty powerful. Yeah.
Very, very powerful. Definitely something to just ponder and think about a little bit deeper and how you can
Yeah.
apply it. So, yeah, this has been amazing for people listening that would like to learn more from you, maybe get in contact, figure out where your clinics are going to be so they can sign up. Where can they find you online?
Oh, they can. Well, I have a website, conniecombs.com, or you can Facebook me, message me.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and I'm sure all the listeners that this was incredible. And just thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your wisdom and knowledge that you've gained over the years and just keep
You're
it
welcome.
going. Keep that
And
simple.
we also have our No Excuses, Connie Combs No Excuses Clinics page, and you can get all
Okay,
the updates there with clinics and updates.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
No
Well, thank
excuses,
you.
everybody.
Yeah, no excuses. Get with
Yeah.
the program, right?
Love
Whatever
it.
it
Yeah.
may be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Well,
doing dishes, no dishes in the sink. That was my dad. No dishes left in that sink. No excuses,
no
right?
excuses.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It's true.
Yeah.
So true. Park at the park at the farthest spot at the parking lot. No
Yeah.
excuses. Go do
Yeah.
it.
As far out as you can and get your steps in for the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no excuses.
Because
Love
people
it.
have a tendency to be lazy.
Oh yeah.
People, you watch them and you're like, wow, they're getting lazy, huh?
Hmm.
Can't let yourself get lazy when you're doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And today's day and age, it's very easy to be lazy. So you really have to kick your own butt to
Yeah.
do that. Because like you said, even
Yeah.
earlier to circle back, is how you are in your day-to-day life is how you are as a performer and a competitor. So how do you want to
Yes.
show up every day to let it reflect your performance in the arena? And I think just that
Mhm.
idea really give ourselves the accountability to show up every single day for ourselves in order to really perform how we want. So it's
Right.
a lifelong journey, right?
It is. Yes. Well, thank you.